So, first question I'm going to ask us is, do you think that picking a genre that is a bit out there, like spec fic or horror, or even crime in a sense, although that's not as far out as most, is one of the best ways to introduce queer, gay, lesbian, trans, whatever characters to the wider world, or is it just something that you fell into? Like, was it something you chose because it's more acceptable in that sort of genre? So, Nigel, you've got the real world, in the sense that
it's not paranormal.
It's not paranormal, and it's not even sci-fi. I mean, my story is based in a real world, but a real world that's been affected by climate and other weird things. But yours is set primarily around Sydney.
Sydney and country New South Wales. Yeah, that's right.
So, were you able to take any liberties with fictionalising anything, or is it a fair dinkum crime novel where everything is rooted in a completely real sense of place?
Yes, I'd say it's the latter. It's there's a couple of places that I haven't named. Like there's a town out in the country that I didn't name because it was too hard to try and choose one and make it. Like everything else is named, and I went to Dubbo and I went to Parks and Parramatta and Penrith just to check out that I got it right. And then there's this one town that, when I was looking at the map from when he was driving from Sydney to Parks, it would have been actually hard to find one, so I didn't name it. And there's another inner west suburb that is actually Ashfield in Sydney, but I didn't want to name it because it meant I could make up shops and that sort of thing.
Next door to me.
Right, yeah.
So you can make up shots, so you've got an element of complete fiction in there to enable the story to work, yeah.
That's right. Mine, it wasn't meant to be a crime thriller when I started it. I had this idea that I wanted to write this kind of family drama. Maybe I had quite pretentious ideas of writing a literary family drama and about what would happen if you're the person looking after. If a child goes missing, you're the one looking after it, but it's not actually your child. How would that affect your relationship with your brother and your mum and dad? And I can't really remember my thought processes, but I thought this family that accept him as being gay, accept the main character as being gay, suddenly something like this happens, and then out of that comes all their hidden homophobia and that sort of thing. That was the original idea. Turned out to be quite boring, but halfway through my writer's group, I said, no, nothing's really happening. So then things started happening, and then that's when I thought, oh shit, this is actually a crime thriller, and I rewrote it as a crime thriller. So it's kind of lost that slight sense of, it has lost that sense of the family, their homophobia coming out, but certainly the family detail, I think. But anyway, when it was really interesting for me to discover that shift from, what I rather pretentiously thought it was going to be, into something that was very much more a clear genre, but with a gay character.
Yeah, and do you enjoy the genre side of it?
Yeah, I love it actually. Yeah, I love it. I was really surprised that I love it. And I remembered, I thought, oh, well, I've never really read crime fiction, but then I remembered all the crime novels I had read when I was younger, and how much I'd loved them, and how I would race through them, whereas the sort of more literary fiction that I was reading, it would always be quite an effort. I do like, I do like some literary fiction, but like if I tried to read a book of a prize winner, I'm like, oh, yeah. Do I want to read this on the train, or do I want to put it on my phone? Whereas with crime fiction, I can wrap it up.
Yeah. Yes, that's my argument against capital L literature, but we won't go there. Genre is so much more fun, and we tend to make a little bit more money. Genre writers, not a lot, because we still don't make any money being writers, but but it's the whole, much easier to sell a crime novel with any kind of storyline, seriously, than
It's interesting. When I started the first book in the series, I started it, probably about 10, 11, 12 years ago. And when I did the first draft, I got it professionally assessed. And the assessor said to me straight away, oh, you're combining genres. And it's something I never really thought of. I just thought, I'm just writing a story that I want to write. The first book is basically Alan and Warwick, who in the first chapter, they're dead, but they don't know how they died. And they stumble into the theatre district of the afterlife, and it goes from there. And I was on the only other panel I was on, which talked about which one question we were asked what's the difference between a love story and a romance? And I and one of the other guys on the panel said, you know, I don't really know. I just wrote what I wanted to write. I didn't think about the genre. I just wrote this sort of esoteric fantasy about it and went on. And he said the same thing. I just lived out a sexual fantasy I had with someone I used to know that never actually happened in real life, but I played it out in my fiction. There was an editor-in-chief from one of the major publishing houses who turned around and she looked at me directly from over there, from probably where Matt is standing now, and said, and clearly told me what a romance novel is, what a love story is, and if you put yourself down as a romance novelist, you have a contract with your readership, and that's what they expect, and all that. And the thing is, I've actually wondered if this is more, I don't know, if in certain countries we're more free about how we mix our genres and how we see it. And the other thing for me too, I'm actually, my background is very much media, so I've grown up exploring cinema, TV shows, and they're allowed to mix genres. Cinema has mixed genres for years. So when I started writing my first book, I just thought, okay, this is a story. This is what I'm writing. Little did I know is that even reviewers and bloggers would start talking about it on, so what actual genre is it? Is it this? It's a little bit of that. I'm thinking, that's not even occurred to me. It's a story. It's a story. Just fall into it and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's like Buffy.
Yeah,
Buffy.
yeah,
It's everything, isn't it? And people don't
question
what genre it is, because it's a TV show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not CSI, and it's not, you know, so it's not realistic, but apart from that, it's, you know, it is what it is.
I was just going to say, maybe in the case of romance, it's the contract with the readers thing is that there's a very specific thing that romance, that, you know, if they're looking for a romance imprint, they want it to do what it says on the tin. So it's kind of one of those things of, I think that there are some genre situations where it's not about artistic freedom, it's about a very specific product they're looking for. It's the same way that if you trust a chef at a restaurant, of course you want to eat what the chef prepares for you. But if you want a ham and pineapple pizza, you want a ham and pineapple
pizza. Yeah. But this is the interesting thing is I think for since the beginning of cinema and television, genres started being mixed. And so people expect that when they go to see it to the cinema, maybe seeing this Cowboys versus Aliens, this B-grade film that was really good. And the main character actually has an emotional arc and grows. And
it was a proper alien film and a proper cowboy film.
And people are happy to accept that. But I say, first book, my two characters are dead. There's a mystery of how they died because they can't remember. One of them was always in love with the other but never told him in life, and here's a second chance to go on. But plus there's an angel, and plus there's this. And then I talk about this one, part of it's in Sydney, parts of it are in the afterlife. The angel's in the middle trying to work out what's going on. He doesn't know about the magical spell going on and why Adam wants to stray. And to me, that's quite normal to write in
That's like ancient mythology. That's like the gods
appearing
in the lives of humans. So that's nothing new at all.
Exactly.
Don't you find though with fiction that when you do that, then people try and give it a name? Like there'll be a category, overall category, say with crime, and then there'll be like subcategories. And as soon as you do anything outside of it, it'll be, oh, that's a new subcategory, let's call it this. You know, there's all these, like, they add little bits on to what it's going to be. Almost like those academic sociological words.
The librarian.
Straight back the librarian.
My first series, my PI trilogy that HarperCollins inexplicably published at the time, you know, good for me. When I set out to write that, I actually set out to write a lesbian private eye novel. Because I specifically wanted to be the Australian Val McDermid. I mean, that was my dream, because at the time Val McDermid had a lesbian series with the Lindsay Gordon series where she had a lesbian journalist. But at the same time, she also had a straight PI series, which was doing as well. And so off the back of her straight PI series, other people who wouldn't normally read a lesbian PI novel were reading that. And I came along after that, wanting to create an Australian character, and we didn't have any in Australia at that time. We had no female PIs, contemporary ones. Kerry Greenwood had already created Phryne Fisher, but she was 1928. So there was one in Sydney that was short-lived. She only had two or three books. And then I came along, and the other thing I wanted to do was make Melbourne a character as well, because as you will know, Nigel, when you're writing realistic crime fiction, the sense of place is seriously important. Whether you're creating a town that you don't name so that you can put shops anywhere you like, or in my case, devising the best lesbian bar on the planet, which no one ever looked for, but two people did look for a park in Elwood that I'd taken the characters to at one stage because they thought it would be a good place to walk their dog. Took me to task afterwards, we couldn't find it. I said, I made it up.
I just wanted to ask how everyone on the panel feels about when your book is sort of genreized because of the audience or because of a minority group. Like if you're YA, because if your books are, the genre is young adult and it doesn't matter what the contents is, or your genre in this case is queer, and no matter what content is, that's put as one of the genres, and how you felt about that, if that was something you sought and embraced or something you preferred not to.
I've started writing what I describe as a young adult time-travelling urban fantasy adventure with a queer twist. So, I just wanted to put everything in there. But I was specifically writing for young adults because the characters in them were, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. But I wanted it to be realistic, that if there were two women in there who were going to fall in love, they wouldn't necessarily have explicit sex like in my grown-up books, but it would be there and it would be possible. And so some instances like that, you want the label because you want that audience to read the book. And then in other times you don't want it because, but then sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, Twilight was written for young adults and look what happened, so.
I just want to say, my first book was with a different publisher to begin with. And I signed the contract, I think, early, right at the end of 2010, and it wasn't going to be released till the end of 2011. And when they were ready to start working with me with the editor, the editor-in-chief sent me the editor's email that she wrote to him saying, I've read this, but there's no sex in it. And this was a publisher, not a gay, GLBT publisher. But there was this whole thing about no sex continually through this. I mean, there's hints of maybe sex happen and blah, 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 and all this. And added to that was the editor-in-chief's comment. He's like, you call this an erotic novel. You're going to have to work damn hard if you want to see this book survive. And I'm looking at it going, at no stage did I write an erotic novel. At no stage in this contract did we talk about, you took it on my chapter-by-chapter breakdown and the first chapter. Just because it's a gay novel didn't mean. In the end, I did put 3 sex scenes in the first book, which I didn't feel needed to be there. But the first book contract, you don't want to argue too much.
Well, I just brought up because I know the singer Janelle Monáe has talked about that when people hear her music and don't see her, they're like, oh, this is really fascinating sort of fusion of electronica and jazz, and it's genre-defying, and I don't, it's all of these different things. And then as soon as they see a picture of her, they start putting R&B and rap in what genre it is, and it's
But do you think that's more in the US? Like I adore Janelle Monáe, and I think of her as an artist, and I didn't see the picture. I knew she had dark skin. But I didn't know what she looked like, and the first track I heard was Many Moons, and straight away I was hooked. I think in Australia and in Europe and England, we're less likely to pigeonhole
Yeah.
You know,
It's like we like what we liked, in a sense.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So-
No, what were you going to say?
Oh, well, I was just going to say that I was actually very happy to be put into crime thrillers, because I, for ages, when it became a crime story, I didn't know if it was really good enough to be a crime novel, and certainly didn't know if it was a crime thriller. So even up to a few weeks before it's published, people would say, what sort of book is it? And I'd say, oh, it's kind of like a crime thriller. And then my ex-boyfriend was on the phone, he said, oh, do you know you're already on the Random House website? So I had a look and it said crime thriller.
Yeah.
Right, so then I started saying, oh, it's a crime thriller. And then when people started reading it, and were reading it in like a week, or some people read it in a day or 2 days, and I think they're very fast readers, but and I thought, oh, okay, well, it's a crime thriller. So I was really pleased, and if I see it in a bookshop not in crime,
Go put it in crime.
I feel like saying to them, yeah, but don't put it in Australiana.
Yeah, and that's another, just one sec, Beck, that's another thing about, you know, where you put things, because there's a book out there on the table by Kerry Greenwood, which is out there because I've published it, and because two of the main characters in it are gay, so I figured that people here might like to take a look at it, because it's absolutely wonderful. But because on the back of it, it says something like, one of the characters is this, and his lover or something, the teenage general. So there's a mention of the word teenage general. Now, when Kerry first wrote the books, the main characters were like 14 and 15 years old. And I said to her, I understand, you understand, that historically that is quite accurate, and that at 13 or 14 in ancient Egypt, they were men.
Yeah, yeah.
But the modern world will not understand that. So can we make them a year or so older, because they were still teenagers and all that sort of stuff. She was more than happy for that, you know, just to... But because of that teenage general who was on the back, the first time I saw that book in a bookshop, it was in the YA section, and I said to them, hello, no.
Having read it, it is not YA.
Grown up, you know, male sex, not in the young adult. It actually would have been probably quite fine in the young adult, but it wasn't being marketed as that, so I didn't want to have parents going, what is, you know, to a bookshop, what the hell is this book doing here, when it was, it's ostensibly written for grown-ups, but there's actually nothing in it that, you know, that teenagers shouldn't have, you know, access to.
It's funny you mentioned Twilight, because some of the things that were branded in the Twilight style to draw in the Twilight readership, like Poppy Z. Bright's Lost Souls would turn up in the young adult section and things
good.
like that. And I'm just like, yeah.
Beck?
I was just wondering if you find being pigeonholed, as you mentioned before, stifling, because I did some writing back in my early 20s, and it was sort of Ronald Reagan had sort of never killed us all and things like that, so it was all post-apocalyptic, dark, depressing, really pompous crap. Which I am never admitting to writing, if you ever find it. But I found that every time I tried to branch out of that when I was back there, I wasn't allowed to by the people around me. So have you ever sort of wanted to sort of write something just completely different and felt that you can't because of this pigeonhole you've been pushed into?
Well, so that was my first book, and I'm starting on my second, with the same characters at the moment, but based on my previous experience, it might change. And I want to try and stay in the genre. I would love to write other things. I haven't got any sort of contract to write the next book, so they're not demanding anything from me. My fear is more the opposite way around, that I want to stay in that genre, but I've that fear of, can I do it again? You know,
it's okay, you can do it again. You've done it once, you'll be able to do it
And you'll probably
again.
the second one.
And there is second book doldrums, seriously, because your second book is never as good as your first, and your third is always better than your second.
Right.
It's all right.
Can I write my third one next?
You can write your third one next. Yeah.